Hello, I'm Linda from Belleford. I've been married for over a decade now, and today I want to share something quite personal with you. It's a story about love, mistakes, and what happens when you lose your way even inside your own home. This isn't about judgment, it's about reflection. And if you find something of yourself in my story, I hope it helps you before it's too late. My husband Richard and I live in a quiet corner of Belleford with our only son Nathan. It's a modest life, comfortable, nothing extravagant, but enough. Richard's a good man, hard-working, dependable. But like many marriages over time, things between us grew quiet, familiar, and eventually distant. About 6 months ago, we hired someone to help around the house, a young man named Emilio, quiet lad from out of town. He did the cleaning, tended to the garden, and occasionally kept an eye on Nathan when we were busy. At first, he was just a helper, nothing more. But one evening, I returned home a bit later than usual. Richard hadn't come back from work, Nathan was already asleep, and Emilio was in the kitchen reading a book. I joined him just for a cup of tea, and we got to talking about life, family, loneliness. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Weeks passed, and Richard had to travel for work, just 3 nights away. Emilio stayed to help with Nathan. On the second night, once the boy was in bed, Emilio and I talked again, and I kissed him. It was brief, but it cracked something open inside me. Days later, we kissed again. And it didn't stop there. I wish I could say it did. I began living 2 lives, wife by day, a stranger by night. Emilio wasn't just a temptation, he became an escape. I hated myself for it. Every time I looked at Richard, guilt consumed me. Then fate turned the mirror. One afternoon, I found messages on Richard's phone. A woman named Claire, from his office. Their messages weren't just professional. I didn't cry. Not at first. I simply froze. That evening, I sat him down. I told him, voice trembling, everything. About Emilio, about the kisses, about the nights I should have stopped but didn't. And Richard, he looked at me. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, I have something to tell you too. He confessed about Claire. That night, the 2 of us sat not as husband and wife, but as 2 people who had both failed each in our own way. And do you know what the most painful part was? Not the betrayal, but the silence that had grown between us over the years. We could have lost it all, but we didn't. We let Emilio go kindly, but firmly, and we agreed to counselling. The first sessions were awkward, I won't lie, but slowly we learned to speak again, to listen. We started eating dinner together again. Richard came home earlier. Nathan smiled more. And I felt like a wife again. A year later, Richard took me to a small lake. It's where we used to go when we were young, before the bills and responsibilities came. There, he gave me a new ring. For a new beginning, he said. And I cried. Not out of sadness, but gratitude. If your marriage is going through something difficult, let me tell you this, perfection doesn't exist. Real love isn't about never getting it wrong. It's about choosing each other again and again, even when it would be easier to walk away. Don't let silence become the third person in your marriage. Talk, be honest, and if you've made mistakes, own them. Because love isn't built on being flawless, it's built on forgiveness and the courage to begin again. If this story meant something to you, even just a little, please like, subscribe, or share it with someone who might need to hear it. I'm Linda. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.